Affairs Forum of WZTV Fox 17. And now your host, Dr. James Haney.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is African-American female adolescents, a project. And we're fortunate to have with us two persons to talk about African-American females. Ms. Susan F. Dixon. Ms. Dixon is the president of Learning Systems Group, an organization that is concerned with African-American females. And of course, with Ms. Dixon is Ms. AVienneau3. Ms. AVienneau3 is also with the UWCA as a project manager for African-American adolescents, a project. And let me welcome both of you ladies to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Ms. Dixon, what we'd like to do this morning is to talk about African-American females as a project, and at the same time to give our audience some additional information dealing with some of the other things that African-American females face. But before we get into that, let us have you and Mrs. AVienneau3 later on to give us some background information about your background and the education and things that were important in terms of leading you to where you are. And then, of course, Ms. AVienneau3 will give us that same kind of information, and then we'll talk about African-American females as a project.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank you so much for having us both here to talk about the project. Basically, I suppose to highlight my background, I'm not a Nashvilleian by background. I'm from Pennsylvania and spent many years of my career in developing programs that would address societal issues facing families and individuals, and then moved to Nashville 6 years ago.
Very good. So what about your involvement with the Learning Systems Group?
I'm president of Learning Systems Group, and Learning Systems Group is a private, nonprofit organization that develops programs and products, teaching materials, deliver training in a variety of areas. We do programming in the area of disability and rehabilitation and substance abuse prevention, specifically health prevention as well, and also in education and special education.
Very good. Okay, Ms. AVienneau3, let's talk about your background in the UWCA.
All right. I am a native Nashvilleian. I received my educational experience here in Nashville, receiving my degree from Vanderbilt University. Professionally, I have years of experience both developing and implementing programs for youth, primarily programs focusing on issues for young girls, and that is what I do at the UWCA. I also have an artistic background in that I was a former dancer with the Dance Theater of Harlem. So I bring that combination of both education and experience plus the artistic background to this project.
Very good. And let's, Ms. Dixon, to talk about African-American females as a project. And I say that from the standpoint that ordinarily, when we talk about this segment of the African-American population, generally we focus upon African-American males. And I think everybody is familiar with this whole syndrome of the endangered African-American male and et cetera. But it's often surprising to people to recognize that there are some real problems dealing with African-American adolescent females. And let's talk about that from the perspective of the two of you this morning.
Okay, I'd be glad to. I suppose the part of my background that I skipped over was the 20 years in Washington, D.C. And during that time, I had the opportunity of seeing firsthand some of the challenges presented to African-American females, and particularly youth. The severity of the challenges they were facing, the complexity of their lives, and certainly knowing from my standpoint of being a female, I had one perspective, but then you apply that to the African-American, and you know even the additional challenges that were being faced. And I was always sensitive to the fact that I felt that we were skipping over that segment of the population. and spending so much time focusing on the male, and yet the female is such a critical part of the family and the continuation, you know, of the African American culture and family. And so interestingly enough, when I came here to Nashville some years ago, I started working with Adelaide on another program that she was doing with African American females. And so we immediately started dreaming and visualizing a program of this type where we could apply both of our areas of expertise, ours in the area of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, which is our organizational expertise, and theirs is with youth, in particular African American. And we decided to design a program that would address the particular needs of African American youth. So it was really my 20 years in Washington, and seeing firsthand of the challenges presenting to African American young girls, even living in a city that was very, it had a very strong African American culture to it. But even with that, the support systems weren't always there.
Very good. Ms. Bonneau, now,